Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
Não é tempo técnico, mas é intervalo aqui no podcast. Já imaginou se seu time tivesse um seguro para não perder nunca? Pois é, isso não existe. Mas com a Zurich Seguros, quem não perde nunca é você. Na Zurich Seguros, os planos se adequam às suas necessidades em qualquer momento da sua vida. Seja seguro de auto, residência, vida e muito mais. Diferente de alguns times, na Zurich Seguros você pode confiar. Para saber mais, acesse zurich.com.br ou consulte seu corretor.
Hello and welcome to the Ground Jewels. It's been a while. My name is James Dixon and I'm delighted you've joined us for the podcast that celebrates special sporting places. And today we've got England international goalkeeper Nigel Martyn. Nigel played for Bristol Rovers, Crystal Palace, Leeds United, Everton, 23 times for England. So we're going to talk to him about his village cricket career and where he's currently playing for Knaresborough Cricket Club up in Yorkshire and playing up there at Aspin Lane ground. So that's what you've joined into today. That's what you've come for. An England international talking about a sport, a completely different sport, but it is a sport that he's very, very passionate about. Probably is his first love, cricket, more so than football. And we do sprinkle a little bit of football chat in there. He talks a little bit about all his old grounds, playing at the old Wembley, etc., etc. But it is mostly cricket. And mostly cricket is the reason why I had a hiatus from this podcast. We just launched the 3rd series. We had those great Ian McMillan and Simon Inglis episodes, and I was playing cricket where I really quite badly broke my wrist. And it's my own fault. I was bowling. I was fielding off my own bowling. I got driven back down the ground very hard. I tried to put my hand there. I put my wrist there. There went a big sort of crack. I looked down at my wrist. I thought, all that hurts. I'll bowl, well, in fact, I didn't look first. I thought, all that hurts, hold it. I thought, I'll just finish off the over. I've got one ball left. And my wrist was at this sort of 45-degree angle. I was like, that's not supposed to be like that. And that was the end of my cricket season. It also meant editing the podcast was very difficult for a while. Got out of the habit of it. Do apologise, but we're back and we've just recorded 4 really lovely episodes, including this Nigel Martyn one that you're going to hear. And yeah, back doing what we've always done. Talk to someone really super interesting about a ground that they love, and you will hear the passion that comes through this chat with Nigel. He's a lovely, lovely bloke, and delighted to bring this to you. Regular listeners will know we do a segment called Around the Grounds. We look at stadium news that has happened this week. And Neil Gray, the SNP minister, who is under fire at the moment for taking chauffeur-driven visits to Hampden Park and Pittodrie, which he says were essential. Now, I don't want to get into the politics of that, but let a man watch the football, please. This is if one podcast can say that, we fully support Neil Gray's attempts to use Scottish government cars to just make his journey to and from Hampden Park a little bit easier. So that one's fine. Good news as well from Northern Ireland. Let's go all around the UK. Good news from Northern Ireland. Glentoran's Bet McLean Oval, to give it its full sponsorship title, but Glentoran's Oval has reopened the railway stand, which is great, and it's going to be just in time for my visit. I'm going in a couple of weeks, and I've never been to Glentoran. It's one of the great grounds, and I think thank you for reopening up one of the stands in time for my visit. So that's good news from Northern Ireland. What's happened since we've been off? Oh, we've had Commonwealth Games going back to Glasgow. That's going to be interesting. I'm sure we'll talk more about that as the Commonwealth Games approaches. The last baseball game that's been played in Oakland, this is really sad. The Oakland Athletics are moving to Las Vegas after the Oakland Raiders have moved to Las Vegas and after the Golden State Warriors relocated from the Oakland side of the Bay Area to the San Francisco side of the Bay Area. That Oakland Coliseum is a stadium I've been to many times. I got married out there. I've been there for numerous trips. I've seen baseball there. I've seen American football there. It's a dump, but it's a glorious dump. It's the people of Oakland and the people of the East Bay area and going up into Fremont and Dublin and Rockridge and Berkeley and all those little great communities out there have been really harshly treated over the last few years. I know it's not a rich area, certainly by California standards, but to lose three teams in the space of less than a decade, probably half a decade, just feels incredibly unfair. They've always given great support to the Athletics. You know, when their owners haven't even wanted to support them. The Moneyball came out of Oakland out of necessity because the payroll was so low. It's they're really great fans. The Raiders fans are great. The Athletics fans are great, and it's just a shame that all their sports teams are going away. And that's that American model that we, I think, sort of intrinsically have some questions about as British sports fans and how sporting, the franchise system, how it can just uproot. And if there's another community that wants a team and they're willing to spend more than your community, you can lose all that heritage and history, and it does feel very, very sad. So yeah, that one's a little bit of a shame. And interesting news from the RFU, as they say they're planning to reduce the capacity of Twickenham to improve spectator comfort. So the RFU is on about taking the capacity down from 82,000 in Twickenham to 80,000, and to focus on their renovation and redevelopment plans on upgrading the stadium infrastructure, repairing roofs. That's always a good idea. Some transport enhancements. And it's really trying to make, they say the focus is on the sort of spectator experience. I am sure that will be reflected in the ticket price. But what we have seen in the Autumn International so far, and we're recording this after in the sort of second weekend of Autumn Internationals, is if you've bought a ticket to Twickenham to watch England play either the All Blacks or the Wallabies, you've not been happy with the results, but bloody hell, there's been some good games of rugby played there. And if that experience could just be a little bit nicer, particularly getting in and out of the ground, a few less people getting up during the game to go for their fifth, sixth, seventh pint of Guinness, that would be useful as well. And I mentioned Twickenham. We probably wouldn't cover this normally, but I'm very hopeful we've got a really exciting guest to cover Twickenham in an upcoming episode, so that will be exciting. But that's around the grounds for this week, and now I need to get you to where you've always wanted to go, whether you've known it or not. Let's go to Aspin Lane in Knaresborough, North Yorkshire, and listen to Nigel Martyn. So today on the Ground Jewels, we are joined by Nigel Martyn, former England international goalkeeper Nigel Martyn. But we're not really going to talk very much about football. We're going to talk about one of his other passions, cricket. Nigel, welcome to the Ground Jewels.
Nice to be here. Nice to see you, James.
I'm going to start by being potentially rude. I don't think it's rude. I think it's endearing. But I need to thank you because, and why I say it was rude, because I'm going to reveal my age, but you were involved in the very first piece of sport that I think I ever saw. That certainly that I ever remember seeing, which is the 1990 FA Cup semi-final between yourselves and Liverpool.
Yeah.
Which fantastic game. You win 4-3 playing for Palace. You're then involved in the second piece of sport I ever remember, the 1990 FA Cup final, the 3-3 draw with Man United. And I wasn't allowed to see the replay because I was only 5 years old.
Well, the replay never happened, so we didn't lose. Man United didn't win the cup that year. We actually drew it. As far as you're concerned, it was a draw, and we shared it. No, great sporting memories. I mean, being part of that Crystal Palace team, having just joined partway through the season from Bristol Rovers, Liverpool had beaten Palace 9-0 that season, which is probably one of the reasons why I got a move. And then to be able to beat them 4-3 in a thriller at Villa Park was a real highlight of my time at Palace. Really, one of them. And to get through to the final, we all felt that it should have been settled on the day, and the 3-3 draw was again an exciting game. Perhaps it'd have been better if it had gone to penalties and finished on the day. As it was the thought we all sort of thought. And really, neither team really showed up for the second game, and they snuck it 1-0.
And it would have spared us all that quite well that yellow and black kit. I'm not sure it was a classic. I'm not sure it was a.
No, I'm not. I think it was something to do with Jeff Thomas's team he had when he was a youngster or something, and he wanted to wear that, so he pushed for that. I'm not the greatest fan of that. I think we should have just worn our normal second kit.
Fair enough. You're still involved in sport. It's but now you've swapped. What was it? You were wearing the green and black in those days. I think I vaguely remember. But you've swapped them for cricket whites. And you're playing still to this day up at Knaresborough in Yorkshire at a very high standard as well. You've just won a promotion to ECB Premier 2 up there, which and we all know the high standard of the Yorkshire cricket leagues. So what makes you keep turning out on Saturdays? Into your sixth decade.
The love of sport, I think, really. Team sport especially, I've always loved being part of a team. I've still got that desire, so throughout the winter I'll be walking, swimming, cross-training, doing whatever I can to stay as fit as I can, because that's one thing I don't allow myself to be, is not fit enough to be in the team. If you're going to be in there, it's no good not being able to run a 3 or, when you should be, and try and push for 3s rather than settle for 2s. That's the kind of way I sort of play it. I want to, get as much out of it as I can. And, I'm lucky enough, the team I play for now, Knaresborough, when I first came, we were probably at least 2 divisions lower, than we are sort of going to be now. And the idea, the club's ambition was to get into the Premier Division, and we managed it last season.
But modestly, you didn't mention that you won the title, you won the championship, and I was looking back through your career, and I wasn't sure. But is that the first division that you've won, or did you win a division when you were at Palace as well?
Yeah, no, we won the old first division, which is now the championship, with Palace. Yeah. We got relegated the year before, when they sort of sold Ian Wright, Mark Bright, Jeff Thomas, Andy Gray. A lot of the mainstays of that team had been sold, and we got relegated. But then Alan Smith took us on the following season, and we got promoted back as champions. So yeah, it was nice to win that league. And then coming to Knaresborough, I think I've been there 6 seasons now. We've won the title 3 times. Once was the COVID year, so there was no promotion or relegation because obviously not every team took over. But we've managed to jump from sort of Division 1 into the Championship, and then from the Championship now into the Premiership. So that's it's as high as we can go, and we're looking forward to it.
And for people who don't know Knaresborough, Knaresborough is a lovely sort of North Yorkshire town. It's got a fantastic viaduct. It's got a lovely old crumbling castle. How does Aspin Lane, your ground, sort of fit into the situation of Knaresborough, and how would you describe it? Because obviously we're quite interested in grounds on this podcast.
It's in the middle of the Aspin estate, so there's lots of houses around it. To like one side, we have a road running down one side of it. The other side, actually, in behind there, if you were to walk, there is a walk in behind there and a beautiful little pathway which goes right on top of the crag, so you can actually look down onto the river from there. So from the other side, if you venture out a little bit, you do have some really nice walks and everything. The ground itself, it's a fairly big ground, so it's good for scoring runs on. And I think we moved from what is now the school playing fields, probably 50 or 60 years ago, something like that. So it's not like one of the oldest grounds, but it's a typical cricket ground, really. It's fairly modest with its bar area, changing rooms, things like that. They were probably built at the same time. We're always looking to improve everything we can as the further up the ladder we go.
And what do you sort of look for? Because I'm a village cricketer, not as good as you, clearly. But when the fixture list comes out, I'm always looking to see who we're against and who we're away against, and what nice grounds that we get to go to. And I'm looking at you next. You might get to play at North Marine Road in Scarborough, which is one of the beautiful grounds in the entire world. And which are some of the nice sort of those typical sort of Yorkshire grounds that you get to go to and visit?
That's part of what I loved about when I first moved from my old club to Knaresborough. That I really enjoyed going to see new grounds, and that's part of the joy for me, is to actually go and look at some nice. They're nice places just to be, let alone play cricket in. So I really do enjoy that. Obviously, North Marine Road, I would imagine, would have the greatest availability that weekend. I would imagine, I think everyone will be looking to see, to do that. I mean, we've been lucky enough in the Championship to play, on the main ground in York, so we've sort of ticked that box, and we get to play at Harrogate every year, or we have done. So we sort of ticked that box as well. Just some of the other. I guess some of the grounds more out on the East Coast we don't get to play so often, but obviously now in the Premiership we will, and even down to Castleford. I've seen pictures of that, and that looks a really nice ground as well. That is part of the joy for me, is to going to new grounds, and getting little jewels. I really did enjoy. Like playing at places like Bolton Percy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or played there. It's a beautiful little ground. It's got a church in the background. The pavilion's lovely. They've got a balcony that they can you can sit and watch the game from. There's a little tea room probably 50 yards down the road. So my wife would go down there and walk down there and get a slice of cake and a cup of tea or something. And yeah, just beautiful places to be, and that's where I take enjoyment from that also, and playing for Cornwall over 50s, which I do as well. That's lovely because you get to play on different grounds, sort of all over predominantly the southwest. But if you go far enough into the tournament, I think last year we were in Lancashire and playing, over there. And I think Lancashire had actually played on the ground like 2 weeks before. So it was, it's great to play on these grounds.
Of course, I love a ground with a balcony. Our great rivals, the only redeeming feature of their ground, for as far as I'm concerned, is it's one of the few around us where we can sit on a balcony and watch that. That's fantastic. You did mention Cornwall there, and I do want to take you back because that's where you're from. So you're not originally a Yorkshireman. I guess you stayed up in the area, fell in love with it after you were at Leeds. You could feel free to obviously correct me on that, but you grew up, and was cricket a big part of your life growing up, or was it football when you were younger?
It was all sports. Going through school and everything. So I was lucky enough to be in the football team, the cricket team, and the rugby team. I only ever played rugby and cricket for Cornwall schools. I never made it at football. But I was an outfielder, all through my school years. So then it just became football through the winter and cricket through the summer. But when I left school, I wasn't actually even playing football. It was cricket. It was the only sport I was playing at that time. So I grew up playing all three. I think cricket was always my first love. I was probably better at football. Certainly once
Mm.
I was allowed to sort of play in goal, which is where I wanted to play, which is what I managed to do after I'd left school.
And growing up, because I mean, play cricket's fantastic because I've been able to find a scorecard for you playing for Foy in 1986, batting at number 4, keeping wicket. Were you always a wicket keeper?
Yeah, I think goalkeeping, diving, catching ball was something that I used to do as a kid on wet days at home. If we live right next door to a park, so we practically lived in that park playing football most of the time, cricket through the summer sort of months. But on the wet days when your friends didn't come out or whatever, I would get a power ball, like a bouncy ball, and throw it against a wall. I'd go onto my knees and throw the ball against the wall above Mum's Rayburn, and then sort of dive sort of full length across the room to catch the ball, and then start from the other side and throw it back the other way, at a slight angle. So I got quite good at throwing and quite accurate at throwing, but also, that hand-eye coordination. I must have been doing that without knowing, training my brain to do that from probably the correct age to be able to intercept that. So I've always been able to sort of judge where a ball is going to be, and you get pretty good at catching it. So wicket keeping was then something I really wanted to do because it when you're young, it was what reflected goalkeeping. So there's a lot of transferable skills, natural sort of transferable skills. Obviously, with wicket keeping, it becomes more technical, and that's something that I've sort of learned and adapted really as I've played.
I'm smiling while you're saying that because I did the exact same thing until I think I knocked a few too many ornaments off, and that got quickly put a stop to. I should go back and tell my parents they stopped a promising sporting career, and when they did that. When you break, because the story of you breaking into professional football is really interesting on its own. There's the sort of lovely flourish about the tea lady and all this sort of things. But by the time you get to Bristol Rovers in the sort of mid to late 80s, does cricket have to cease for you then? Or are you still at the sort of time just before the sort of money kicks in when clubs were playing cricket in the winter? Because I've got programs from Watford and Birmingham and QPR where it references their cricket teams where they play friendly cricket, where the football club would play friendly cricket matches in the summer, and that's just in the 80s. Is that sort of still going on when you make it to professional football, or have we just missed it by that time?
Yeah, no. My first club was Bristol Rovers, so I was, I think, still in the cricket season playing for St Blasey that year, and I got the invitation to go on a trial for Bristol Rovers, and it was straight into a football season. So at the end of that season, so it would have been sort of 87 into 88. So it would have been the cricket season of 1988. I remember mentioning to Jerry Francis, we'd sort of go home for, the off season. So maybe, have a month off, could I play some cricket? And I remember him saying, no, because I'm fine. If you break a finger and you're not fit for the start of the season, I'm fining you. So it was kind of then I think banned and probably into your contract not to do anything too dangerous that was going to, risk injury, like going on holiday and going water skiing or something like that. You could rupture a ligament in your knee or something. So even things like that were sort of frowned upon, and we weren't supposed to do it. So no, it had kicked in by that time. So really, my last cricket season would have been 1987, which I didn't get to finish, and then I didn't play cricket again until I think 2010. I retired from football in 2006, but I retired with a stress fracture in my ankle that will never heal. So I was told by the medics that playing sport again is probably a no-no. And I got sort of 4 years of Saturdays and really wanting to do something. And then a friend of mine lived near Cookridge in Leeds, and there was a team there that he was involved in. They were called Old Modernians at the time. They're now called Leeds Modernians. And he said, "Why don't you start playing cricket?" He said, "I'll start playing if you do again." So we started playing again in 2010. And the first couple of years, it was more recreational. It was a bit of fun. I managed to tear both hamstrings in the same season because I didn't warm up or anything. And then I played with my son in that team in the twos, just having a bit of fun. And then I decided to take it a bit more seriously. I was asked to come and play in the first team. Did that, and I used to start getting fit. Sort of beginning of the year, January the 1st. I'd probably start doing fitness, and took it really, really seriously. And then, sort of from that time, so probably 2012 onwards, that's when I've really started taking it seriously again. And I'm 58 now. It gets harder every year, but if you're determined enough to do it, and you can find the time to put the work in, you definitely get the benefit. Out there when you're keeping wicket for 50 overs, and you're into the 40 something over, and you cannot afford to feel tired. You cannot afford to feel, or not be able to dive and stop a ball, in a close run chase, something like that. So when I'm in that, and I do stop a good stop or take a really good catch or take a stumping or something, I kind of say to myself, it's worth those hours of walking, of swimming, of cross trainer, of doing that work. It's worth it in this moment, because you get to do something for your team, which helps hopefully towards a win.
I'm struck there that that's really quite a small sliver of time where you were just having fun. Really only sort of 2 seasons sort of mucking around, and that sort of competitive sportsman's instinct sort of has kicked in. Do you think you'll ever be able to sort of slide back down the teams, go to the twos and the threes, or will it be, when you're out of the first team, do you think you'll give it up?
I don't ever want to give it up. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd want to play as long as physically possible. Getting promoted into this team, into this division now, does put my place under threat. We got a lad from the Bradford League who was a wicketkeeper batsman. He's from our area. He's played for the club in the evening league for years. And he came back, and last season, and the skipper sort of said to me, "Look, I know he's back, but you can carry on keeping wicket this year." So I don't think there's any sort of difference in the wicket keeping department. He's just a much better batsman than I am. So I do know that potentially is going to make things easier for the captain if he's got a wicketkeeper who can either open the batting or bat at 3. It allows him to have an extra batsman or an extra bowler in the team, and I understand that. My job is to be as fit as I possibly can be and go into nets and try and impress the same as everybody else. To try and stay in the first team, it's not going to be necessarily easy. But if I don't do that, I then have the dilemma of, we have a young wicketkeeper in the second team who's probably, I want to say he's 16, something like that, and he's very promising. He's a very promising batsman as well. Now you then get into the realms of not wanting to stop somebody like that developing through, because that's obviously the future of your club, and that then becomes a problem, because then there's talk of a third team. I've always found the higher you play cricket, and this is going to sound weird, as a wicketkeeper, the easier the job is, because the bowlers are more accurate with their bowling. The last thing I'm going to be needing at 58 is going to be throwing my body all around on trying to stop leg side bowling and things like that. So for me, I've just got to be as fit as I can be and as good as I can be, and try and find a place somewhere in either team. Either obviously I want to keep wicket. I think that's my strongest facet, if you like. I'm happy to work on my batting. I can hold a bat. and I can score runs on occasion. So maybe to work on that side and try and be useful somewhere in the team. Maybe share the second team keeping skills and try and see if I can field the odd game. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know what's going to happen next season.
Fair enough. What type of batsman are you? Are you a sort of elegant batsman, a nerdler, quite nuggety, or do you go for your big shots? So I can't quite picture what I expect you to be.
Yeah, I go out to bat, and I am one of these people that get slightly constricted by the situation. So a couple of seasons ago, I actually opened the batting for the whole season. Didn't score many runs, but I remember the skipper saying to me, "Just don't get out. Just don't get out. We've got to try and put on a good opening partnership. We don't want wickets to fall, that sort of thing." And I sort of went in my shell. So I was, I could stay in, no problem, but I wasn't scoring runs, and then the pressure of that would build and build, and I'd play a rash shot and nick off or something. I think I'm more of an accumulator of runs, but once I'm in and the confidence is flowing, I can play. I can up the ante. And I'm not I'm not a big hitter of the ball, but I can hit fours and sixes, but they're not going to be sailing 30, 40 yards over the boundary, unfortunately.
Let's talk a little bit about Cornwall over 50s then. So, obviously you're playing up there, but you're very well known in Cornwall. How does that work? Is it so just selection, and you're presumably playing over 50 sides from other counties? You must get to play at some pretty nice grounds.
Yeah. That's part of the joy. The over 50s, I sort of got back into contact. So the captain of the over 50s first team, because there's three teams playing over 50s cricket in Cornwall. So we have a first, second, and third. So the guy who's the skipper of the first team, a guy called Sean Hooper, I last played cricket with before playing the over 50s stuff with in, I think, Cornwall schools under 15s. So we were playing cricket together for Cornwall schools under 15s, and then obviously he played for a different club than I. Well, we both played for St Austell Cricket Club for a while. He then moved away and started playing for another club, and then obviously I moved to Bristol Rovers and had my football career and everything. And then we've kind of still stayed in touch. Once I saw that he was doing that, and he said, "Do you fancy playing some games?" And it's about an 800-mile round trip for a home game. So there's an awful lot of commitment, an awful lot of support from my wife. I've got to, I must give her a mention, because she goes to watch all the games as well. And obviously, if we're playing, I think Somerset away is probably the closest game that I get to play to Yorkshire. Because we, in our group, there's 8 teams in our group, so the other 7 will be Channel Islands, Devon, Somerset, Wiltshire, Hampshire, Isle of Wight. It's all down along that sort of southwest.
Do you fly or do you drive?
We drive. So last season we played at York away on the Saturday for Knaresborough, and we had our overnight bags and everything there, and we drove to Middlesex straight after the game, which took about nearly 4 hours. We got to Middlesex at probably, I think, just before 11, so we managed to get the last orders at the bar where we were staying. And then we played Middlesex the next day in the last 16 of the national competition, and we beat them in a very tight game. I think we scored something like 140 and maybe bowled them out for like 120 or something. So it wasn't a great pitch. And we beat them there, and then we drove home on the Sunday night back up to Yorkshire again. So there is a lot of commitment. Ordinarily we play on a Wednesday, so we can play Saturday, travel down usually on the Tuesday, play the Wednesday, and then travel back on the Friday. So we do get a little bit, but when that's finished, we're both pretty tired because there's a lot of travelling going on. Because you sort of play every other week, really. So yeah, there is a lot of travelling to be done with that over 50s.
So Matt, you're playing more games than you might have done at the peak of your football career. This is impressive commitment. I don't want to expose a potential scandal here, but you've mentioned already you're 58. I've noticed you're also playing for England over 60s.
No, I'm not. There's something really strange going on because I got an email last year from England over 50s, inviting me to a trial, and everything, and it was quite strange because it came out of the blue. There was no email or nobody rang me up and said, is this something you fancy doing? And so I replied to the guy who sent the email and just sort of said, hi there, like, obviously very, very honoured to get this, but, is this actually meant for me? And the reply I got back with was, I'm really sorry. I've got your email because I've been in touch about something cricket related before. Your email has popped up onto my list and it's been sent out to you by mistake. So apparently
Oh no.
apparently there is another guy called Nigel Martyn, and he said he plays for Essex. So I stupidly mentioned this to my cricket mates, both at Cornwall and at Knaresborough. And of course, every time anything happens, Nigel Martyn from Essex would have stopped that, or Nigel Martyn from Essex would have caught that. So it's good fun. But I keep still getting the odd email from them telling this is the itinerary, this is this. But they've searched it's really weird because my teammates have tried searching and they've gone. There is no Nigel Martyn who plays for Essex over 50s. I don't think they've looked in the over 60s, so maybe that's where he is. But it came completely off grid, and I got an email back saying no, it wasn't meant for me. So yeah.
That's a
I don't know
shame.
what I'm obviously fit and available, but no.
You fit, and well, let's start the campaign now. It must be awful. I mean, I don't know if that's anything ever analogous happened in your in your football career. You were told you were in a squad. There's obviously the famous story of La Manga and waiting to find out whether you're in the World Cup squad. Imagine if you got the wrong information there.
Yeah,
That would be
that
heartbreaking.
I'd have been probably sharing a flight home with Gaza.
Yeah, you smashed up your room for no reason.
Exactly. Yeah. No. No. I mean, it was strange. I look at it as a bit of fun now. My teammates obviously give me a bit of ribbing about it, which is hilarious. That's the side of it I like. I like a bit of Mickey taking and banter, and that sort of side of it as well. Because I think if people are smiling and laughing, they play the game better anyway. So I do try and encourage that. But it's it was a strange one, but I'm looking at it smiling. I'm not bothered.
We will start the campaign for 2 years' time to get you into that England over 60s side, and so that'll be a nice sort of full circle moment. In terms of wider cricket, are you a good spectator, or is it are you is your interest in cricket purely driven from playing? And if you are a sort of good spectator, where's your favourite place to watch cricket?
I can watch cricket. I injured my back. We moved house, and I reckon I did a lot of lifting and stuff. And halfway through the season, I injured my back, and I was flat on my back for about a month. I couldn't come and do anything. I literally couldn't get out of bed. It was horrible. It was the worst pain I've ever had. And when I did start going up and watching again, because I was sort of told, don't do anything for 6 months, let this really settle down. and it happened sort of in the June time. So, the peak end of the season, I missed the second half of the season. And when I did go up to watch, it's really strange because even though they're your teammates, when it's game day, and I'd go along and start chatting to them and everything, you just don't feel part of that setup. It's really strange. You feel slightly as an outsider going to watch. So I occasionally, like for evening league and stuff like that, my wife and I will wander up, or they actually play Knaresborough Forest, which is even closer to where we live than our ground, and we'll stroll along there to watch. And I watch them play that in the evening league. But Saturdays, it's not the same as playing. For me, it's about playing, and that's where I get my love from it. I do go along to Headingley occasionally to watch, a Yorkshire game or an England game or whatever. So I do go along there, occasionally. But I'm more with the amount of cricket that I play. I'm not asking to go to watch cricket as well and put that on top. Maybe that's something that comes, when I can't play anymore. Maybe we go to watch, an odd game here and there.
Yeah, we've all got to find the sort of breaking point of our wives or partners, haven't we? And not push too far beyond there. It's the
I can honestly say I've been blessed. Amanda was scoring at Foy, so I was playing football for a team called Heavy Transport, and Amanda's dad, who was a goalkeeper as well, when they sort of, after about a year of me playing, they sort of thought this guy's actually quite good, so they got Amanda's dad to come and coach me because he was a goalkeeper and he played for Cornwall and played Southwest League football, and they got him to come and coach me. And then he sort of poached me to go and play for their cricket team. And his eldest daughter, Amanda, was the scorer of that team. And that's where I met my wife. So it's sort of through football and cricket that I met her. She's obviously grown up with her dad playing football and cricket. So, she's been very, very supportive of all the way through, obviously, my football career. But then, before that, she was standing on the sidelines on many a very cold, wintry conditions in Cornwall, watching me play football before I sort of turned professional. And then she's watched me from anywhere from Penzance away to Wembley Stadium, sitting in nicer seats. So she's supported me all the way through and supports me now. Comes to every game. Packs up a lunch for herself, brings her books, brings some colouring to do, and so is very, very supportive of me. And obviously, to and fro into Cornwall, all our family's down there. So obviously we get to go home and see all our family as well whilst playing the cricket. So, it is nice to be able to do that. But you've got to give a shout out, to the wives, because cricket season there's an awful lot. It's as Amanda points out to me, it's the best 20 weekends of the year, really. It's the summertime, and it is the sacrifice to do, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to do that, and try and make up for it in the rest of the year if I can. That's how I try and do it.
It's lovely hearing you talk about your wife that way, and it's clear, at least to me, that you've got a very special bond. So that's a really nice way to end our little chat about the cricket. But I couldn't have you on here without getting a few little thoughts about some of the grounds that you've played at, which is interesting. And so, if that's okay, can we sort of go rapid fire through your sort of four main clubs? And get any thoughts or observations about those grounds. So I think when you started at Bristol Rovers, they were playing in Bath at Twerton Park.
Twerton Park, yeah, which, I mean, for me was as big a stadium as I played in. When I made my debut in '87, that was the biggest ground I'd ever played in. I think there was about 3,300 people in there on the day, which is probably the biggest crowd I'd played in front of. And the excitement of going and playing there was huge. It became, other teams hated going there because of it. It was so basic in its, the changing rooms and things like that. So when we got sort of like the glamour teams of the third division back in the day, that was like Sunderland and things like that, I remember they came and we beat them 4-0 at home, and they pretty much smashed up the changing room because it was like, oh, this is they had Roker Park, which in the day was an excellent place, and you could tell that they didn't appreciate coming there, and that became a bit of a fortress for us because other teams hated coming there, and so that holds a special place. Then Selhurst Park at Crystal Palace, again, bigger ground, and then you get to play in all the, as they were, first division grounds then, and it's changed. But the memories I have of first going to the new clubs, and seeing these new grounds, is very special. And the grounds that you get to play on, I really like Villa Park for some reason. I always seem to play well there and enjoy going there. And Old Trafford and Highbury and all these grounds. I do love playing there. Goodison, Elland Road. I mean, they've all changed since the day I walked through the door. So Crystal Palace, we used to come out in the middle of the pitch. They'd come out in the corner. So that changed whilst I was at the club. Leeds, we used to come out. There was a different area. The changing rooms were completely different. They all got remodeled for the Euro 96. So when it first went there, everything changed. And Goodison, obviously, into its last season now. That would be sad to see that go. But everything has to progress. And I love playing at Goodison. It was probably the nicest surface to play on in the whole of the Premier League, I think, throughout my career. When I played there, it was always immaculate. We played on some not so nice pitches. Selhurst was never a great pitch to play on, but we kind of kept it that way because it suited the way we played, and probably interfered with the way other teams liked to play at the time. So it was never the nicest surface to play on, but Goodison was always immaculate. So I did enjoy going there. And the old Wembley Stadium was, I've been to the new Wembley. I don't know, the memories of when I was lucky enough to get there with the cup finals, and then to be able to go there as an England player and to drive in the coach into that entrance through the two towers, and into that little area there, and going into the home changing room. That really holds special memories as well.
Because you had a long wait, didn't you? Because you made your England debut in Moscow in 1992. You don't play for England at Wembley until 97?
Yeah. Well, it was at the time where Crystal Palace were going up and down. So we got relegated, then we got promoted, then we got relegated again, and then we didn't get up the following season. We lost in the playoff final. And I actually remember losing in the playoff final at Wembley and thinking, that's it, I'm probably not going to play in the Premier League again. And it's really weird because later on that summer, Leeds come in and buy me from Palace, and you're sort of back in there. And then obviously George Graham comes to Leeds. George is very defence orientated to start with. So he got our defence sorted, and the clean sheets started happening. And, that got me back into the England team. So, it's then I was able to play at Wembley, a few times. But I'd been there lots of times with the squad before, not getting the chance to go on, but, savouring the atmosphere and everything. And, it was a very special place.
It really was. We have and don't expect you to go and listen to this, but we have a lovely episode in our archive with Nigel Tassell, the author, who wrote a book on the old Wembley Stadium, and he talks about that. So if anyone is interested, please feel free to check out the Nigel Tassell episode on the old Wembley. But Nigel, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for talking cricket with me. It's been a delight, and thank you for indulging me and my discussions of my 5-year-old fandom. I nearly became a Crystal Palace fan, which wouldn't have been good being from Birmingham. But I don't think being a Birmingham City fan's treated me any better, to be honest. So, but yeah, thank you for those lovely memories, and thank you for your time this morning.
No worries. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. I loved that. In fact, he stayed on the line for about 15 or 20 minutes, just swapping more cricket stories. I didn't feel like I could sort of press record back. And he probably wouldn't have told me some of the stories he told me if it was being recorded. But it was a fantastic chat, and you can see, and you can not see, that's the wrong word. You can hear his obvious passion for cricket. And I think if you gave him a choice between an afternoon playing cricket or an afternoon watching the football now, well, his choice is evident. You know what he's going to do. And I love that. I love someone who's a sportsman still wanting to be a sportsman, not saying, well, my time is done, I'm not playing at international level anymore. He's still getting the same joy that we all can get from team sport. And yeah, I think that's a wonderful lesson for all of us to kind of keep going for as long as we can, keep playing at as high a level as we can, and don't give in to Father Time. The joy of sport, it can be found at the grassroots level as well as the international elite level, and Nigel is proof of that. So thank you. We're going to hang around up in Yorkshire, metaphorically, of course. But next week, we're talking to Jim Waterson. Now, Jim you may know Jim as the media editor of The Guardian, although he's just left there to become the editor of London Centric. But we're not talking about any of London's fantastic sporting stadiums, past, present, or future. We're talking about his love and his great love of Bootham Crescent, the home for so many years, from the 1930s to 2021, of York City Football Club. And Jim's passion for the club is immense. And I'm just going to give you a little teaser from the episode now.
Oh my God, we haven't mentioned the Nazis. How have we not mentioned the Nazis? You've got to slot this in at some point. Was when, I can't even stop laughing, when some photographer turned up at the ground one day on a tip that Bootham Crescent had been covered in swastikas and Hitler was wandering around.
That's right. We didn't even talk about the Nazis. And if you want to find out what that is in reference to, please join us next week when we talk to Jim about Bootham Crescent. Until next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.